Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Milt Babbitt's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We go, please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, that'll bring us to our good news portion. PDIS update from Compass. Sure.
We just wanted to come and talk to you a little bit about our PDIS at Compass tonight and what that looks like in our building right now and some of the great things that have happened so far. So we wanted to start off just giving you a little bit of background on what is PDIS. So really it's a systematic approach, it's a framework that... I'm sorry, can you look at it a little bit? I think it's okay, better?
Yes.
Good. All right. So PBIS is a proactive approach to establishing these behavioral supports and social culture for all students in school. And it really helps us achieve that social, emotional, and academic success for all students. Right, so we have a video that we wanted to share with you that gives a good overview of what PBIS is.
relentless as we teach reading or any other subject is the ultimate act of prevention that underlines PBIS. As you can see, there's a ton of research, and this is just a fraction that supports the positive outcomes of PBIS. Discipline problems are decreased, suspensions, aggressive, violent behavior, absences, truancy, bullying. In addition, it gives more time for successful on-task behavior, which then increases academic motivation, engagement, academic achievement, and the overall psychological well-being of our students. So our work started over this last summer. We had a core group of teachers from various subjects and all the grade levels that got together, became our leadership group. From that group, we started identifying behavioral expectations for our students. These expectations became the baseline for appropriate behavior at Compass.
And so out of that grew our SAIL matrix. So SAIL stands for safety, accountability, integrity, and leadership. So those were the 4 things that we really wanted to teach about. We had to keep it short, but still be able to encompass everything that we wanted to address. So with that, we created these categories for all settings: learning spaces, hallways, bathrooms, the lunchroom, the playground, the bus, and then eventually out to the community. So out of this matrix, it took us a lot of time, but we were able to create some more things that you'll see later on in the presentation that have helped us be proactive in our approach. So these are some of the posters that you'll see in our buildings to remind students of the expectations.
Once we established those expectations over the summer, we had to develop a way to teach these expectations to the students. It's important for us to teach these expectations using the same language in the same manner across all adults, across all grade levels, so the students understand that these are universal expectations, not just one individual teacher's expectations, and then they go to the next teacher and have to relearn new things. These are all universal expectations across all settings.
So our team came together and with our instructional coach, Bucky Labor, worked really hard to create these lesson plans for teachers to use. And there's lesson plans for each of the areas that you saw in our matrix. So she used our DII format, our direct interactive instruction, and with these lesson plans, she's able to put together the modeling, the gradual release process that we expect, the student engagement strategies, our checking for understanding, and then use of technology as well. So these lessons are all housed in our Google Drive, so teachers can access them as they need to for reteaching. Yeah. We also have video modeling that we put together last summer with Judson Bowman, and what we did was the teachers did the misbehaviors and the students did the correct behaviors. So this is available on YouTube for you to watch. It's a 5-minute video, so we didn't think we'd play it for you here tonight, but if you'd like to watch it, it's there. It's really fun. The kids had a great time, and so did the
Feedback is a key component to teaching. So we developed an acknowledgement system that helps students understand what they did appropriately when we caught them being good. That increases the chance that the behavior is going to be repeated again in the future.
So our acknowledgement system, you guys have got some tickets that our teachers use. They hand out 10 to 15 of those a week, and then they have a classroom time. So that's what those are on the front of your packets. That's just one component. That's we expect a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 positives to 1 negative interaction with students. That's one way that we help build those relationships. And another thing that we did was we ordered a couple of light bars, and we have the students' names who are our winners and Friday ticket drawing winners, and we run those in the lunchroom and then in the office. And we also had Jim Basketball Jones. He's a character building assembly person who he came in and he really tailored his assembly for us, lower and upper elementary, for our SAIL expectations, which was pretty cool. So the students had a good time and the teachers were able to participate in that as well.
Again, teaching behavior is relentless as we teach reading or any other subject. It is that ultimate act of prevention. But when we do encounter negative behaviors, we need to develop a way, a system to respond that everybody uses in the same manner that teaches that behavior.
So out of our hard work this summer, we were able to come up with a consistent process across our this behavior flow chart, and it really outlines our process for what happens. We observe the problem behavior, and then we decide is it office or staff managed. And we spent a whole lot of time going through our different definitions of what that is, and who would handle that, and how do we put in place those interventions to make sure that we're reteaching and being proactive about our behavior management.
So all that work really took place over the whole summer, all that volunteer work, all the teachers. The last process here is using database decision-making to help us create ideal learning environments for our students. It helps us shift our work from crisis response to prevention.
So this is an example of our student dashboard using our school-wide information system. It's called SWIS. And it can help show us what systems are problematic, and it helps us determine which environments we need to target and alter to respond to student needs. Because we've got, we can organize our referrals and use them specific to time of day, to environment and things like that. So we're able to troubleshoot a whole lot better than we would if we didn't have this.
Another tool we use for data is the TFI. This is an assessment that helps us identify the extent to which we're implementing the core features of PBIS. Not only are we implementing all core features, but as we go along, are we sustaining those core features? So in February, we began assessing ourselves. This is only had been a short time that we had been implementing PBIS, so we don't expect an overall high score, but we were using it to identify what areas we need to go back and re-hit. So overall, we scored 47 percentile. Actually, that's really good for that short amount of time we had been implementing it. The ideal would be to hit at least 70%. Once we reach 70%, we start to realize that students will be making better choices. We should start to see that in data through discipline records and such. At that time, then, we started to partner with MyGLSSI. That MyGLSSI stands for Michigan Integrated Behavioral and Learning Support Initiative. We actually have someone from MyGLSSI here to help support us during the presentation. Wave your hand, Melissa.
Hi.
So they are big in the state. They have a lot of professional development, and we applied for a grant with them. There were two tracks that we had to figure out which way to go down. There was a strengthening professional learning series as well as an installation professional learning series. And so in February, when we did that TFI, since we got 47%, they recommended not the installation professional learning series, which would have been for beginners, but we went on to the strengthening professional learning series. So we were pretty proud of that.
And so looking at the results from our tiered fidelity inventory from February, just a few short months to June, we were super proud when we just conducted our final walkthrough and team assessment. We scored 75% with the team, 72% in implementation, 75% in evaluation, so our overall is 73%. We're really excited to hit that threshold to start to see those outcomes. So what does that mean now? Now that we've hit that threshold, we still have a lot of work to do, and we're super excited about what these next steps will be. So for our next school year, we're going to continue to monitor those core features that we showed and explained to you through our presentation. Through an active cycle of that continuous improvement, we're going to do our data reviews, just like we normally would. But we're really excited to start to implement some of those Tier 2 interventions for students. And through our continued partnering with the ISD, they're going to provide that support and that training for us to do that. Right? And we'd also like to invite you to join our kickoff in the fall when we do that for PBIS for our 2nd through 6th grade students. So we'll let you know what our plans are and what the date will be when it gets a little bit closer. Right, we've got one last slide just to thank our team that's worked really hard over the last summer and all school year. We've not, and we are very, very excited.
Any questions at all?
The referral, problem referrals, who gets the referrals?
So we have minor referrals and major referrals. referrals. So my referrals go into a system, an Excel Google Doc, and then I enter them into the system as well. Our major referrals go to our principals. And then they, so it depends on, of course, what the behavior is. So after that, what they're able to do is have a conference with the student, and then they're able to decide what that consequence will be for that action.
We're also compiling all of those referrals, so not just focusing on the individual student, but all the students across all of Compass, and entering them into a data system, and that way we can identify where most of the referrals are being given out at. So maybe if it's a hallway, we can post more staff there to prevent that in the future. Or if it's a classroom, we could add in more supports in that specific classroom. So we're starting to look at all the environments of where the troubling behavior is occurring and making adjustments to that. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, this will bring us to our first public comment portion of the meeting and agenda items only. As agendas are full, speakers are limited to 3 minutes. All right, so let's move on to revisions and approval of agenda. I know that Rick, you said that Nikki's going to present the Nikki's going to present the technology service proposal. That's the Get a motion to approve the agenda with Nikki. Recognizing Nikki for the technology service proposal. So moved.
Second.
Abbott.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brooks.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
McNamara.
Aye.
Simpson.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries.
Okay, moving on to schedule reports. End of year Title I report, Megan Wade.
Good evening. I'm going to stand over here so I can click. I'll try to talk loud. Shouldn't be a problem. All right, so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to present our end of the year Title I presentation. This is just part of some of the compliance that we have to do for the grant, just to share our program components, our growth, how we spend our Title I money with our stakeholders, which would be our community and our board, of course. So first, I would like to go ahead and introduce our reading specialists. We have 5 of them here in the district. This is how we spend our Title I money on reading support. So we have Kelly Croft from North, Lynn Rain from South. We have Jamie Fulton, who works with 2nd grade, Brittany Van Hoosier, who works with 3rd and 4th, and Elizabeth Dumullen, who works with 5th and 6th. We also have reading interventionists or reading coaches who work right alongside with our reading specialists. They are Jamie Stark at North, Shelby Cornett at South, and Erin Hartman and Heather McKibben at Compass. So just a quick overview of the Title I Part A grant program. This is some of the federal government money that we get. It is used to help provide supplementary academic support to children who are at risk of failing or who are failing to meet some of our core academic standards. So how we spend, like I said, our Title I money is we allocate it to, it's allocated to North, South, and Compass. That's all based on our ED, our economically disadvantaged population, and some of the free and reduced lunch account money that we receive. And we use that money to pay for our lovely reading specialists here. This is, I think, maybe our, 14th, 15th year funding the reading specialists out of our Title I program. So we've been doing this program for a really long time. They're very excited to share some of the results with you today. So I'm going to let them take it away.
So the Michigan legislature passed a law, it's called the 3rd grade reading law, and any student who shows a deficiency in reading at any time will get an IRIP. This IRIP is done through Illumina, and we assess students 3 times a year on NWEA and practice and PNOW. If they fall in the 30th percentile or below on NWEA, we do an IRIP through Illumina. This IRIP contains goals that is for Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3, depending on the needs of the student. And it is kept so that we can keep adding to it. And when we do it, we have the initial, and then 6 to 8 weeks later, we do a check-in. We look through all of our progress monitoring notes, make sure that the student's making growth. We put in our results of instruction, and then we'll meet again 6 to 8 weeks later. If they've met their goal, we'll make a new goal. If they didn't, we can talk about what else they need, what their supports we can put in place. So we do 3 big IRIT meetings a year, and then we also do the check-in meetings in between as well. Coming up this year, 2020 to 2021 school year, the 3rd grade learned, the students that we have will take the MEP test. If they fall a year or more behind, they will get a letter from the state of Michigan through SEPI that will say that they are subject to retention. And from there, we can do additional support, and there's a process that takes place. I can talk all day about all of this, so I can stop, but there is a process in place that I can go through with you to give you more information about that if you want more information.
There are early elementary reading specialists, and then there are a couple of us that would be considered later elementary reading specialists. The early elementary reading specialists would be the ones that Kelly and I are kindergarten first, Jamie does second, Brittany does 3rd and 4th, and we also work with their IRIPs, obviously. But prior to the 3rd grade reading law, we did the same sort of work, we just didn't have to implement the IRIP form, which is the goal setting form required by the law. Initially, we have to screen the students to see if they have a reading deficiency. Once we screen them through either DIBELS or the NWEA, we will dig deeper using FAST and Pinnell or some kind of phonics survey. We have lots of things to use to dig deeper. We focus our interventions on those things that show up as a need for next steps or interventions. And we then construct our plan to teach. We reteach, we evaluate, we dig deeper again, wherever they have needs, and then we plan some more. We also coordinate the lesson plans for our coaches, and they follow our lesson plans. We do this 4 to 5 days a week with small groups of students during the classroom teacher's reading time, so that the students do not miss any other time during the day. It's always during their regular classroom reading time.
Right, so I work upstairs with 5th and 6th grade students, and in addition to working with those small groups of students, I feel very fortunate that I've been able to go into the classrooms and also support my students there. And what that looks like is it's beneficial for both of us. Me, it's beneficial because I see my students interacting with their peers. It's also beneficial to the students that I support because I'm able to support them with those deeper reading, thinking skills and strategies that they're being presented with in their wisdom curriculum. So it's beneficial for both of us, and I feel, again, very fortunate to be able to push in and do some co-teaching in the classroom.
Some of our other roles and responsibilities, as Lynn said, we work with kids 4 to 5 days a week. That 4 days is because sometimes we have other things going on. We participate in data meetings with the classroom teachers and the administrators where we look at all the testing scores, look at those students who might need help, and talk to the teachers too about some of those students maybe they didn't score as well on the test, but we know from their classroom performance that they're doing just fine and don't need support from us. So we'll help them analyze that data, work on setting goals for the students, and identify those progress monitoring tools. What does this student need help with, and what can we do, and how can we monitor to make sure that we're making growth with them and helping the teachers, what can they do in the classroom for each of those groups as well. And then the tier coordination is just working with that tier 1 classroom teacher, we're considered tier 2 most of the time, and then coordinating with special education for tier 3 for students with that. This is our population. So we service 25 to 30% of the population K-6. The Title I rules and our school improvement goals both have language in them that has a population marker, and that's 30%. Our lowest 30% is the marker, and we hit that. But what's remarkable is the actual totals is that we hit approximately 50% at kindergarten and first grade. And as you climb up the grades, we hit only, well, this year, the exact numbers are 159 kindergarten and first graders were serviced this year. And then when you climbed up, there was only a need for 19 sixth grade students this year. And that should give you goosebumps, because that is how many students actually needed support here in Tecumseh by the time they reached sixth grade. So, yeah, that's remarkable. Yes, we have the 25-30% marker that we service, but that's overall. And we start young, because we believe that if we give them the support when they're young, they won't need it when they get older. And it works.
Okay, so the fund something out is a text leveling assessment, so that tells us their instructional reading level. And that's what we use in kindergarten and first grade. And our kindergartners come to us, a couple of them can read, a lot of them don't know any letters and sounds, some of them will know a few, some of them will be confused between the difference between a letter and a number. And this year, at the end of, well, now in June, we have 67% of them are actual readers, and that means 67% of them are actually reading after so that's great. And this is our first grade data. We started the year with 60% meeting at the expected benchmark, and now they are 81% expected benchmark.
Our second grade, we do the same. So we practice and put out all second grade 3 times a year in the fall, the winter, and the spring. In the fall, we had 68% at or above grade level. In the spring, we have 87% at or above grade level.
So, third through sixth grade, we also do practice now, but our site here today is to talk about the NWEA assessment with our Title I students.
As you can see, 91% of the students made growth in their NWA this year from spring to spring data. And then we had 52% that met their expected growth that they were supposed to have. And according to the NWEA test, about 50% of students will typically meet that. So we're actually above that expectation of what they have for how many kids will meet that expected growth by the end of the year.
And that is all for us. We'd like to thank you for your continued support in our Title I program. And again, we feel strongly that we make a difference in the success of our leaders and are so proud to be part of this amazing district. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Nikki for monthly finance reports.
I don't actually have anything to present about the monthly finance reports, so the same reports you usually receive. If you have any questions though about those reports.
All right, I guess you're also going to talk about the technology services reports.
Yes. When we, as we have been all year, have been navigating possible areas of cost savings, the LISD was asked to put together a proposal for IT services, to contract out IT services to the ISD. Currently, the ISD provides this service for Sand Creek, Addison Schools, and Britton Deerfield, and they have put together a proposal for us. And the proposal that we've received would result in an estimated $40,000 in labor savings for year one. They do have anticipated further savings for consecutive years after that in the rate of servers and hardware. Eventually, they're proposing that we would be not required to purchase servers aside from those that we need for security measures, and that everything would be housed at the ISD at no cost to us. And the manner in which they are saving saving us $40,000 is we currently, this year, employ a full-time director of technology and 2 full-time support staff. Through a third party, those support staff are. They are proposing that we hire 2 full-time staff for Tecumseh alone. They would be ISD staffs, which is myself, but they would be housed here full-time at TPS. And then the kicker here would be that the administrator, for which we currently employ a full-time director, is shared between smaller districts and ourselves. That is worked into an indirect cost savings calculation and puts us at $350 a day per support staff. So the nuts and bolts are the anticipated proposed cost would be $175,000 next year for staffing alone, and our anticipated cost for next year's staffing is $214,743. If we are interested in looking into this, we can request the director of IT from the ISD come to a board meeting for a Q&A or a presentation. This is just a proposal that was requested of us, and
Does this also include like all the Chromebook cards or is that on top? Or is
no,
just
this
wages?
is just staffing,
Okay,
yeah.
staff.
So, for year one, what the ISD has recommended is that they would keep everything as it operates now exactly the way it is, so that their staff can learn TPS and focus on customer service. But after year one, they would be, that summer, between year one and year two, they're proposing that they start pulling in, doing the full integration. One piece that would be different is that Google Classroom and the Google Suite that's heavily used by TPS would stay the same aside from email. They are proposing that we pull email into Outlook. So that would be a big change.
We talked about that before.
Yes.
Is there a reason why we would have to move to Outlook instead of using Google?
I'm sure there is. I don't know what the reason is, but that would be a question for the director of IT.
And what would the cost of, making that changeover be? Because it'd be pretty significant to move from one email server to another.
Right.
So the conversion cost, excuse me, would be significant. Or could be significant.
I think maybe I'd have to come and give us a report.
Sure.
Exactly what service we cover.
Sure.
We probably need a report from Devin, our technology director, that actually, I know there's a lot of repairs in Chromebooks and so forth, and I don't know if that's included in their scope of services or not, so.
Right.
So I think it'd be something we maybe get more, that's here figured out.
Did I, when we were talking about staffing, was, just trying to understand if I heard you correctly. So would that be, you would take our IT director and utilize them in a different capacity?
We already have an IT director that's not his title, but an administrator that works with the other districts that are currently contracted out for the ISD. We don't have hired support specialists. They would be posting those positions, hiring. The ISD doesn't have the staff for that immediately. So if we did decide to go that route, we would be waiting for them to post the jobs, hire the support staff.
Would they be dedicated to Tecumseh?
They would be 40 hours a week, full-time in our buildings. So I can schedule if something seems they're available for the 24th. Is that?
And you said there's 3 schools currently that are
3
utilizing
districts.
this?
Yeah, Sand Creek, Brett Deerfield, and Addison.
You're gonna ask for work from Desert?
Very good.
Can we get a report from Devin?
Yes, I have proposed. You wanted to present or you just want a written report? Okay, same day, 24th. Yeah, we have set the budget, so it's got it right, okay.
I think you're still up.
Not going away. I'll be here for a while.
Moving on to discussion items, next thing is 2018-19 final budget review.
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we are gonna cover both final budget revision and projected budget for next year tonight. A lot of numbers already. This is currently where the final revision draft stands. I know a meeting or two ago, I mentioned that our first run-through would leave us dipping into fund equity by 1.3 million. As you can see in the bottom right corner, that is 1.47 million now. The difference in the last few weeks is not because we have spent $177,000 in the last few weeks. It is because of an adjustment to revenue, state aid for a certification issue, and an adjustment to the funding that will come from the ISD based on our special ed FTEs this year. If you run through, if you run through most of these pockets here, so the 110 line, which is really have a pointer, goes down by a substantial amount of money, $250,000. That is a combination of things, as are all of these lines, but the school administrators this year, they did a really great job. They pinched their pennies, they saved money extensively. A lot of them I know paid money out of their own pocket, which I was not happy to hear. But they turned in, their final revision budgets are well below what we had given them at the beginning of the year. That coupled with, we did have a high school employee who was on a leave, an unpaid leave for a substantial amount of time, so that those two things together make up that large cut in that line. If you go down, so added needs, that 120 line, that's the special ed staff, pretty much stayed the same. If there are cuts in here, basically the gist of the final revision is we had purchasing cutoff April 30th. After April 30th, all purchasing is done on an emergency or a completely unexpected basis. And that's to help with this process here. So when I'm doing final revision, if there are lines that, it's obvious that we've saved money, that people have really done their part, that's where I'm able to just cut small things, and those small things really do add up. So the special ed line, that's the result of just supplies, travel, mileage, things that just weren't spent this year. Pupil accounting, it went up $8,000. I know there was one conference that was not budgeted for previously. That's about 2,500 of it. Instructional staff, that 220 line, that's the library. Also, those are anybody related to instruction but is administrative in nature. So director of curriculum, the instructional IT staff that is dedicated to the instruction alone, things of that nature. General administration, that's superintendent and the board. And school administration, office of the principal, the big increase there. So we pay for noon supervisors out of the food service fund. However, noon supervisors are not 100% allowable in the food service fund because they also supervise recess, and that's not food service. I was not aware of that. So between first revision and February revision,
in that line you see a cut, and then between February revision and final revision, I put it back in. Business services, small cut, we made an amendment to our contract here last month. Facilities went up 50,000, transportation stayed about the same, and it goes on. The last three are pretty stagnant. So the end result is a dip into fund equity of 1.47 million. So proposed final revision budget leaves a fund balance of the 4.223 number there. That's equal to 14.36% of our annual expenditures. When you're doing the budget, so the board approved revenue budgets are required to be equal to or less than our ending revenue totals. So I am required to budget low on revenue. And on the vice versa, I am required to budget high in expenses. If you approve a budget of 5 million and I spend 5 million in one, we're in trouble. So the district can only spend what you approve, and so the expenses are budgeted high. The budget will have edits between June 10th and the June 24th budget hearing. The changes will be presented during the discussion at the hearing for approval on that date, just to ensure that we have the most accurate budget possible. And then the final budget revision for all the other funds are projected to have the following effect. So the pool. Fiscal year 18-19 will result in projected expenses exceeding the revenues by $37,000. We started this year with a fund equity of $47,000. So at the end of this 18-19 year, we will be carrying forward a $9,800 fund equity. Food service will also result in expenses exceeding revenue by $13,000. We have a healthy fund equity there, so projected 18-19 fund balance will be 166. Debt service. This is our bond issuance. Revenues will be exceeding projected expenses, and our beginning fund equity was $388,684, resulting in a fund balance of $477,950. Capital projects. We will result in projected revenues exceeding projected expenses by $470. That's interest. Basically, our capital projects, we fund it as needed. We will always wash out aside from interest. So we'll add that 470 to our beginning fund equity of 38,000 and 38,364. Do you have any questions?
On the projections for next year, like you said, is this based on losing 50 students because of the graduating class and then coming in?
Yes, and I will go over that when I do the projected budget. This is just the final revision. No? Great. Okay, for the 1920 projected budget. So these are the budget assumptions that have been rolled into the 1920 projected general fund budget. The enrollment, there are two big differences between what I'm going to present to you tonight and what was in your board packet. The two differences are, number one here. In your board packet, I budgeted for a loss of 50 students, just like Tim mentioned, and was asked to bump that up to 100 for conservatism's sake. So this is budgeting for an assumption of a loss of 100 in student count. The state funding. The budget includes an assumption of an increase of $150 in foundation allowance per FTE. Currently, the governor's proposed budget allots for an increase between 120 and 180, but her budget also includes additional pots of money for specialized purposes such as special ed revenue, GSRP, and at-risk, which we would benefit from all three of those. And then, as of last Thursday, the House Fiscal Agency's proposed budget has an increase in minimum foundation allowance of 180. However, their increase in the foundation allowance of 180 exists in addition to a cut $25 per high school student for other pots of funding. So we went in between.
if they do choose if they go with the House Fiscal Agency's proposed budget, will be around $150 per FTE. Also somewhere around there with the governor's proposal as well. This is this is unheard of, that the state doesn't have an idea of what they're doing. So the state budget will not be approved before the end of our fiscal year. The property tax levy, we'll talk about that later tonight too, but in November 2018, that election made our property tax millage whole, which means we are allowed to tax 18 mills for general fund. With the Headley rollback, we were at 17.893, but we had an additional millage pass in November, which will bring us back up to 18 mills. So that's been factored in. Staffing and proposed raises. Union employee raises have been included in this budget. Non-union employee raises have not been included. Also, staffing assignments. We did make a decision on the buildings, so now we can start planning for the year and our staffing assignments. So the reason why that will impact our budget, I mean, not that it doesn't matter what building you're at, but I've budgeted to fill every vacancy, and with a projected loss in students, the kindergarten numbers, we probably won't need to fill every vacancy, but we'll work with Mr. Lewis and his staffing assignments together before June 24th, so there will be some cuts there. I also reduced the contribution to capital projects. This year, we transferred $686,000 to the capital project fund. I've budgeted for $200,000. It will just be what's most necessary. We won't be able to do anything that's above and beyond what's most necessary with that number. So, the end result, if final revision is accepted in the manner in which it was presented tonight, the end result will be the 1920 projected budget expenditures exceeding revenues by $1,007,390. This will bring our fund equity to $3.14 million. Leaving a fund balance of $3,144,629, or 10.9% of annual expenditures. And the projected 19 budget for all of the funds will have the following effect. The pool fund will result in expenses exceeding revenues by $10,420. As you know from the previous budget that I went through, there won't be enough fund equity for that. So we have two options there: cut the spending at the pool, or we would need to increase support from the general fund next year. Food service will result in expenses exceeding revenues by $14,000. Once again, they have an extremely healthy fund equity, so that would dip in the fund balance by that much, leave $151,000. Student activities is new. GASB 84 requires that starting in budget year 1920, student activity accounts that do not meet fiduciary fund requirements be pulled into the general ledger. And they will need to be included in the board approval process going forward. So this will be the first budget cycle for that. Fund 29 is where they will be. They'll be added to the ancillary fund list for this purpose. These activities sustain themselves. They hold fundraisers. Each sport has an activity fund. Each school has an activity fund, and equations and robotics and everything else you can think of, really. Fashion club, that exists. Debt service. FY 1920 will result in revenues exceeding expenses by $146,000. This will bring the fund balance to $624.
And capital projects, once again, will only increase by anticipated interest. Do you have any questions?
What were the capital projects that were?
Yeah, last year, we had $38,000 in pool capital projects. We had an E-rate project, IT-related servers. We had a lighting project, Brent Electric. We changed out the light to LED. And there was a smaller roofing project. I do know, I don't know if Mike is here tonight, but I do know that the boiler systems are, on their last leg. So we did talk about maybe using that next year for the worst case building. Starting the multi-year process of that.
What did we get for state of foundation loans last year? Wasn't it $240 more?
Yes.
And we're only gonna,
$240
right
more.
now we're projecting like 150, so
Yes.
I thought this was gonna be the biggest education spend ever, so what happened? How are they breaking up this pot of money? Did they put a dollar amount, like, are they adding more for special education? I don't understand, they're probably adding more for special education. But did they put a dollar?
The governor is adding more for special education.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
But did she put a dollar number on that at all?
I don't think so. No, but I can look.
And that's all still not finalized, correct?
No, it probably won't be for a few months. Any other questions? Okay. I'm actually still here.
Oh, you're still
Yeah,
here?
she's got a ways to go.
Okay, the grant update. Okay. This is the financial status for the current year grants. Currently, we are projecting that Title I will carry forward an estimated $2,400. That's pretty similar to what we've carried forward in past years. Title IIA will carry forward an estimated $15,268. That is almost the maximum allotment that we are allowed to carry forward. Title IV will be fully spent on schedule. 31A funds will carry forward an estimated $57,000. GSRP funds are anticipated to be fully spent by the end of the grant, which isn't until September 30. And then Project Lead the Way and Career Prep grants have all been closed out for fiscal year 18-19, and Focus Fund monies will be fully spent on schedule. Next year's grants, the consolidated application, which it holds all the titles next year, that's on schedule to be submitted by the deadline for a July 1 start. The 31A at-risk funds, they won't be able to continue to carry all staff currently charged there. For the 19-20 proposed budget, we pulled both the school nurse and the school resource officer from the grant funding into the general fund. And what's happening there is last year we carried forward $180,000. As you saw on the last slide, we're only anticipating carrying forward $57,000 this year. So we did dip into that carry forward substantially this year. And the program won't be able to sustain the same level of staff in that grant next year. Those two individuals, salaries, benefits, all costs were included in that FY 19-20 budget, which is lower. GSRP funds will be awarded in October. The funding is not anticipated to change. And Project Lead the Way, Career Prep, and Focus Fund are all anticipated to continue in the same manner for fiscal year 19-20. Questions?
Do we have any new grants that we're working on?
We have that safety and security, the surveillance grant, and that is, we have a contract actually pending with Mr. Lewis for someone who will put the RFP together, who will oversee the installation,
who will run the entire grant for us. We are meeting with him for the first time in a couple weeks, and we have a contract pending for that. But that-
There are also several other smaller grants that are out there right now, but we usually don't get awards till the fall. Classroom grants, bigger grants. We did apply for one social emotional learning grant, which we did not receive. We were pretty bummed, but it's a pretty big grant we were going for. It was a lofty dream, but thousands of schools around the nation applied for it, and we unfortunately were not one of them. There weren't any schools in Michigan that really awarded it, but we should find out about some of those smaller grants later on in the summer or the fall.
Four twenty-nine tax levy.
Okay. So, the tax levy. The millage that I referenced, the millage passing in November of 18 that I referenced earlier, has been added to our L 4029, which is the tax levy form that we turn into the county. This will need to be approved by the board at the budget hearing here on June 24th. Basically, it is provided to us with most of this detail, and then we are double checking it. We're verifying that yes, this is what we are, this is what we should be receiving, and then Tim and Kevin will sign and we'll send it back to the county. I just wanted to explain what this was before you saw it at the Truth in Taxation and Budget hearing, so that you understood what was happening here. So, as you can see over, see where this maximum allowable millage levy. So you can see here that in November of 2018, we did pass an additional 0.5 mil, but since we have a max of 18 mils, we are only allowed to lay basically to 0.1691 to bring us to a full 18. 7.2, that's the debt millage, and 0.25 is the millage that was passed for the pool. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we got a couple of donations. We got one for $100 for the high school sculpture garden. Aaron Ricketts donated that. And we got $750 for the Cadet 4 program at TLC. So on the action items, the first item is a date for truth and taxation and budget hearing, June 24th. I'd like to set that at 6:30 instead of before the regular meeting. So, any discussion on that? Or any problems with anybody's calendars? No?
Make it work.
I get a motion to set the truth and taxation and budget hearing for June 24th at 6:30 p.m. So, or
Roll call. Abbott.
Aye.
Benzing.
Aye.
Brooks. Johnson.
Aye.
McNamara.
Aye.
Simpson.
aye.
Motion carries.
And then we need to establish Greg as a signatory authority for our accounts. I need a motion to allow Greg to sign.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call. Abbott.
Aye.
Benzing.
Aye.
Brooks.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
McNamara.
Aye.
Simpson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, then can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Abbott.
Aye.
Benzing.
Aye.
Brooks.
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
McNamara?
Aye.
Simpson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And then items scheduled for next agenda will be good news, discussion reports, action items, the final budget, and then both budget.
We had discussing the policy committee going, review the policy committees.
We need to get all of these notes. Rick just got back, so. Get them first, so. That's good.
All right, this brings us to our second public comment portion. Because the agenda's full, please, if you have anything to say, please come to the microphone. State your name, and we'll do 3 minutes.
Ready, go. So, I got there last time, I thanked you guys for slowing down on the reconfiguration changes. And what I thanked you for was what I thought was what had happened, which was a positive affirmative vote to come up with a plan by December, and authorizing the administration to work on that plan and make those recommendations. And it was brought to my attention after the meeting that that's not exactly what happened. And I'm just concerned about the lack of clarity and conciseness in the proceedings that occur here at the school board. It is imperative that there's precision in what you do. The motion was confused, the language was confused on the motion. Suzanne Moore kept saying, so we're tabling it, so we're tabling it, so we're tabling it. There is a very big difference between a positive affirmative vote to come up with a plan and tabling the discussion of the reconfiguration, which is what you actually did. I'm not sure what's going to be recorded in the minutes, but it's quite clear from the video, I asked several people who are parliamentarians to review it, that it was very unclear what it was that you were about. I think it would be a good idea if you guys would go down to a city council meeting and watch Mayor Baker run a meeting. I mentioned this to you before. He does it with precision. This thing that happened this evening with the vote on the consent agenda. Every single item that would be in the consent agenda would be orally elucidated. People would hear what it is that you're actually voting on, so that there wouldn't be any confusion about what the board is about. This is vitally important. Precision and following the rules. Here's the other thing that I'm a bit disappointed about. Mr. Simpson, you admitted in the paper about directing actions occurring in the school. We know that the 2-track process that was going to be available to the high school was rescinded without there being a vote. And yet members of the board directed that there be changes in the schools. That's not how this works at all. None of you as individuals or as a group should be going privately to the superintendent and directing what he or she is doing. When you do that, you're actually violating the law. Open Meetings Act, every directive that is issued from this body is supposed to be public, and there's supposed to be a vote. And, that means there's a motion. The motion is clearly stated. The motion is seconded. The motion is voted on. That there's a roll call vote that records it, and it's in the affirmative. Now, just as an example of something that you could run into with trouble on this is, if you voted to come up with an affirmative plan to do something, and then you said, we don't want to do this anymore, what you need to do is vote that down, and it requires a supermajority in order to do so. It's just part of the rules.
Okay.
It would be really nice if, when we came here, we knew what you guys were doing, and it was clear to everybody that was here what was happening.
Brother Jones, I would like to say that I, for one, am very happy about the PBIS presentation at the beginning of this, talking about how what we're doing with, the primary school is working. And it does seem to be working out in a lot of the students' favors. And it's not what I had as, a youngin in elementary school, but that's a good thing. I think that us moving in a forward direction and not stopping or, heaven forbid, taking steps back, I think that's ultimately going to be good. And I would recommend not, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's clearly working, right, as all the pie charts have shown, right, we're on schedule, or in some cases we're beyond schedule. We're, beyond what we're supposed to be in a positive way. I think that shouldn't be worked on if it doesn't need to be. And then for the presentation about the projected 2019-2020 funding, I think it's a great idea that they're having the student group funding specifically, like individual sports, individual schools, and something with the band program, having all of their own student financial sections, so we don't have, the stereotypical blunder of all the money going to the sports and none of it going to the arts, or all of it going to one group and other people being left out. And I think that amount of equality is very great. And I think that a lot of what has been shown here is that we're doing a lot right. And so I would caution to not toy with it too much if it's working.
Jennifer Landstrom. I haven't been to a few meetings, but I was actually starting to be relatively pleased with the efforts I saw of the board to slow down and listen a little bit before they made any large-scale decisions. But as of recently, I've noticed again that the promise of transparency hasn't been lived up to by members of the board. In fact, there's been many accusations of impropriety that have come to light recently. And I, for one, with many others here, would kindly ask you to consider again, especially Mr. Simpson, whether or not it's time to resign from the board.
Okay, moving on. Greg, do you have any update or?
Not really an update. You guys hear me okay? Not really an update, but I have to agree. I mean, what we heard tonight from Lisa Shirk and Jason about the effects of PBIS and what they're doing, and especially at the earlier levels, is a good thing. It's a step forward. The improvement that we saw that our reading specialists could demonstrate, on how our readings progress. I mean, if there's one area that I think is probably the most important, it would have to be reading, because reading's power. If you take standardized tests and you can't read very well, you're at a disadvantage, even if you can do a lot of the other skills that are required. So reading's probably the key to unlocking a lot of those test scores. So it's just great to see that happen. You heard about, our administrators were very good at holding down the costs this year on supplies, because we did hit a snag with expenses. Unfortunately, that's not going away in the real near future. But most of all, I keep saying the same thing. So the good thing is I've only been to 2 board meetings where I can speak. If you take a look, if you look at what was up there on the screen and listen to what was said, there's an awful lot of good things going on here. A lot of them. I said at the last meeting, with reference to what we're doing here, the way we're moving forward, we need to plan, not panic. And I think we're doing that. We're doing our best to do that. We're finally getting a chance. I mean, it was odd because I didn't get hired till a month ago, 4 weeks ago today. And then we had, some tragedy, and then I wasn't here because I had a pre-existing rendezvous to go to Europe. And for that, I apologize that I wasn't here to do it, but I don't apologize for the fact that I got to go. It's one of those things I always wanted to do and finally got to do it. But I think if we can focus our energies on going forward and looking at the good things we have, and the best things we have here are the students that we have, the teachers that work with them, and the administrators that support all those people. And it really,
you're one dynamic leader in this district that can move this whole system forward at where it should be and get it back to where it was. The only thing that's stopping us right now is ourselves, the perception that's going on. Yeah, there's wrinkles here that we have to smooth out. It's been a rough year, but I'm extremely proud of the way the students, the staff, and the administration here, and the school board that's sitting by me is managed to, push through that, strive to get better, and I think things are getting better. That's all I have.
Any board member comment, discussion?
So, not to pick on Rob, I don't want it to sound like that, but that term, if it's not broke, don't fix it, that has rung in my head a few times. Recently, Mr. Mills was up here giving a presentation about, what were we, the 89th? 69th, in 2016. If it wasn't broke, don't fix it, but we did. And now we're working at fixing it again. In 2016, we were 69th in the state, is that what it was? In high schools. In 2016, before the changes, right. So,
We don't
I
have
mean,
information for now. Do you have, I'm sorry to interrupt, do you have more current than 2016?
there's not, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
The information Griff presented was from 2016.
Maybe it got better.
And as he was presenting it, that's all I could think was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the point is, we're here now, and now we need to work together to get it right for everyone, not just a few. And again, high school is a little different. But those kids came up through the elementary, the junior high, without STEAM. I'm not saying STEAM's bad. I'm not saying project-based learning's bad. I'm saying we need to find the happy medium. We need to stop digging our heels in and shaking our head. There's only one way, and we need to find that way that is a combination for all of our students, for all of our communities.
Why not do halves then?
That's not a combination.
How is that not?
Public comment is over. Board is speaking
Well,
now.
thank you, President.
Well, let's have some decorum here.
So the
Well,
point is,
yeah.
let's work together. Again, this community needs to come together. We need to stop the negativity. We need to stop the I only want my way, and we need to focus on our students, our teachers, and our community, and that healing. And this is not the way to do that.
I have a question. When did this two-tier system be put in that we supposedly removed? Because I can't find it in any of the minutes of last year.
The superintendent decided.
It did not get.
Then why did we get an email?
Superintendent gets to make decisions.
Nobody's got answers.
So, and if Mr. Jacob would like to come up, I don't know if you got some input on that. It was my understanding, it was something that had been discussed. We were told that it was approved by the last board, although we couldn't find it in the minutes anywhere. And when it was brought to our attention, it was pretty much decided that was not something that was going to be feasible. That was it. There was no more discussion about it after that. I attended the meeting, as did Tim and John, because we had students that would be affected by it. There was a lot of questions asked. Our understanding at the meeting was, and again, Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong, there was questions that were asked, and if they didn't have an answer, they were going to put together an email to go out with all the questions with the answers. Was that the intent at the meeting?
Correct. Partly.
I'm sorry?
Correct.
And did that email ever go out?
No, we were told to put it on hold.
Yeah, told because you illegally directed the superintendent without taking a vote.
The superintendent made the decision because it's not cost effective. Did you just see the budget that we're in?
Yeah, I saw what you did.
So, we didn't do that.
Wait, when did the vote take?
There was never
There was never a vote taken
There
on
was
what
never a
issue.
vote.
Then they shouldn't have formed the parents. That was a
You
choice.
may be right, but
That
that
wasn't from
That
this
That wasn't
us.
this board.
That was not us.
All right.
It might not be on you, but
So
it's
we gotta
been, but
move
it
on.
is now.
I want to make one more comment. There's a difference between a perceived OMA violation and an actual OMA violation. This board has not had a single actual OMA violation.
Except for the one the president of the school board admitted to in the paper.
Again, that's perception.
All right. We need to move to closed session. So pursuant to PA 267, 1976, section 8, subsection H, to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, attorney-client privilege information. Get a motion to closed session.
So moved.
Roll call.
Aye.
Bensing.
Aye.
Brooks. Johnson.
Aye.
McNamara. Simpson.
Aye.
Closed session at 8:16.
Okay, we're back from closed session at 9:19.
I make a motion to waive the investigator privilege with the report, to provide Greg with a copy of the report for employee witnesses and parties to the complaint to be able to review the report beginning at noon Wednesday until 5 p.m. Thursday. There will be no phone or electronic devices allowed in while you review. You will need to make an appointment with Greg. We will begin processing FOIA requests and releasing it to the press noon Thursday. In addition, employee witnesses and parties to the complaint.
Second that motion?
Support.
Roll call. Excuse me. Abbott.
Aye.
Bensing.
Aye.
Brooks. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
McNamara.
Aye.
Simpson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
In addition, I'd like to make a statement on behalf of the board. Through a FOIA response, the superintendent's allegations against the board president were made public before the investigators' conclusion were made public. I would like to read the conclusion for that. This is a quote. I did not substantiate Mr. Rhodes' allegations that Mr. Simpson directed him to unlawfully target employees, to falsify information in a board meeting, to violate FOIA or any other law, or to otherwise suppress student information. I did not find credible the allegations that the board president violated any law.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Support.
Abbott.
Aye.
Bensing.
Aye.
Brooks.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
McNamara.
Aye.
Simpson.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 9:22.